Welcome to this Esko Software Solution Demonstration series. In today's demonstration, we will be covering a specific use case inside of CapePack. All participants have been muted, and at the end of this demonstration, we will unmute for question and answer. My name is Bart Meersschaert, and I will be your host today. So in today's demonstration, I will cover a specific use case within CapePack, and that use case is called display pallets, and it is located here in the program group display pallet, also known as Club Store, where we have the single pallet and the order fulfillment. So what is the display pallet option? Well, here in the help, which we can access from the help menu, and using a search for display pallet, we can see that this offers me a solution in case I have different sizes of boxes that I need to load on the same pallet. Once designed, I can then place those into a truck. Display pallet allows you to combine up to 40 different box sizes with a maximum load of up to 500 boxes. And there's also a powerful load editor that allows you to fine-tune that load. So in a more visual way, this might resonate with US customers who might recognize this as a Costco retail store. So this is a kind of good example of a retail-ready packaging. For example, here we can see some bark tins, some mints in bags or chips, whatever they are. Notice the case right here, ready on the pallet, ready to be consumed. Here we have a very large tray with brownies apparently in them. Again here, some kind of case, and then here in the front, Rice Krispies with a slip sheet here in between the different layers. So that would be a perfect example of the first use case, single item on a pallet. A mixed load is typically for orders, right? So here are some examples, some bad examples. They obviously did not have Cape. So here are some other examples of different objects that were put on a pallet, and not in a very efficient way. Not only does that increase your carbon footprint for shipping, it lowers the amount of SKUs that you can transport, but it could also present a dangerous situation, as you can see here. Two skids stacked on top of one another, and here are some more options. So apparently the plastic wrap seems to be a good way to negate the bad loading pattern here. So how can we improve on this? Well, let's give you a few examples and run through this, okay? So in the previous video, we covered all these basics here, the arranged design group, the pallet group, and the case fill group. And as promised in today's demonstration, we will look at this display club. Let's start with the single pallet. The single pallet kind of overlaps with the pallet group because we have one single item that goes onto a pallet. So let's use this one first and then show you that they are similar, those two options. So here we are presented with a interface with three different tabs across the top. Right here we have our individual packages, which are listed here. We can see that the software has placed 4 examples of packages with their length, width, and height, their weight, and the ordered quantity in here. The second tab covers my pallet, and then I can also decide to place that into a truck if I want to. So for now, we have a 4840 pallet selected with a maximum height of 50 inch right there. And we have a 2,000 pound weight. So in input settings, right here you can see that indeed I am doing this in inch and pounds, but if you're in a country that uses the metric system, you can easily switch here to millimeters and kilograms as your units. Okay. So if we start with this first use case, we are going to use a single item. So I'm going to select this, delete these here at the bottom, and just keep this box. I can already see the length, the width, and the height, and the weight of that box. I can double click on this to open the edit package, or I can click on the edit package right here. So this gives me a more detailed view of that specific item. So here we can see it is a standard box. We'll change that in just a little bit. The package name, a label. We can indicate the color. This is just visual. Let's change this to orange, for example. This is where we key in the most important parameters, the length, the width, the height, and the weight. So 10 pounds. The quantity allowed, the desired minimum and absolute maximum. Okay, so in this case, it is a single item on a pallet, so my maximum should exceed the total number of SKUs that can fit on that pallet. So for now, let's leave it at 25. We'll come back and change that. Also, a very important parameter is which dimension represents the vertical. Well, I probably hear you think, well, the height, duh. Yes, but if I would indicate also the width and the length of this SKU to be placed vertical on the pallet, I give the software more choices to turn this box upside down and left way, right, and whatever way possible to get the most optimal fill. Okay. Now, obviously, this depends largely on the product that is inside this box in this case. So you might not want to do that to make sure the product arrives intact. Okay, so we'll just leave it at the height right now. Also notice some really cool options, which we'll start using in the second use case, where we have mixed objects, where we can indicate whether this specific object must not be stacked on the base of the pallet, and or I want several of these SKUs to be stacked together, or you can scatter them across the pallet. Okay, so let's accept that for now, and before we hit the calculate button, which you'll find up here to calculate the solution, we have to visit the calculation settings. I would say the most important option here in the interface, because this allows you to pick from different optimization algorithms and optimization types. So for the first use case, we're going to use the single pallet optimization, and therefore I would also recommend to select the single package algorithm. Okay, so the single package algorithm focuses on one specific SKU, which in my case I have one. I deleted all the others. And we'll look at all the other algorithms available. They're more important when we have mixed SKUs. In this case, no loading restrictions, and we don't need to spread the final load on the surface of the pallet. So we're not going to give that layer algorithm any type of restrictions. Okay, let's click on the OK button, and the result you can see here is disappointing, to say the least. So let's analyze and let's see why are we having such a weird type of stacking of these boxes. Well, There's one hint already on the screen right here, and that is the total number of packages per load, which is 25. And that should ring a bell, that number. If we go back, we can see that this was the number of SKUs that I required here in my solution. So as mentioned before, just make this number bigger than the maximum allowed number on the pallet, so 50, and then we'll calculate again, and this looks a little better. So I asked for 50, but I only got 40. So you might wonder, well, why is that? Well, for that, I like to draw your attention to the total height of the stacked products, which is 40 inch. You can see the total height of the load is 45.5 inches. So the 5.5 inch difference is the actual height of my pallet, and the height of the product is 40 with 4 layers. That would be 10 inches. So if we go back, let me show you where that's located. So again, here in the pallet, you can see the height of that pallet, and that's simply a parameter of that pallet. And if we go back to the packages, you can see the height of the product is 10 inches. So if we break all that down, we get this beautiful result right here. So it tells me my cube efficiency is close to 90% and my area usage is 100%, so a really good result. Let's explore this screen a little more. If we go to the setup button right here, we can look at the pallet and we can look at the individual box. As far as the pallet is concerned, we can see the corner view, which is the default view, and using my arrow down key, I can go to the second option, which shows me a built-up view. So this shows me how this pallet is built from first to last step. So let's go ahead and close that. So that's called single steps. Then we have a top view, a side view, a multi-side view, a draw view. So if I draw this out, I can see what that would look like when I have a multi-stack, 2 pallets stacked on top of each other. Then we have the length, the width on different sites, and with indicators and without indicators. So the indicators right here is a line indicating the top of the object. So right here, again, I can do a show built-up view where I can see 25%, 50, 75, and 100% stacked right there. You can do that here with right-clicking and then restoring those views. And the indicator right here was the one we showed earlier, indicator active or not. And then we can also do the show content. So show content allows me to show what is actually inside that primary box. And I can see here that I have 12 bottles of, it looks like wine. So where does that come from? Okay, so let's go back. And by the way, I can also, right here, go to, let's see here, we have our format object. I can select this and we can say, is it in control panel? Yes, so you go to control panel, then you can say show outline, show label. So you can put a label on that case if you have multiple, show the color. Let's get rid of that label. So we could do that. And then with the format object, we can also ask to see the content on the selected element, which in this case I selected my palette, so I can see what that actually looks like. Okay, here we can also kind of do a very basic visualization of a shrink wrap around it, and that's also part of the format load, which allows us to place, for example, slip sheets or corner posts around the pallet. So we can set the thickness and the width of that, and we can accept these values. So here I'm adding some corner posts, and I can also add some top cap right here. So let's use a B flute on that, and we can set all the parameters of that load format. Okay, so let's cancel that for now, and let's go back because I promised you to show you where the content actually comes from. And that we do with the, let's see here, if we double click, right there we have what we call the fill wizard. Okay, so the fill wizard opens up a second screen. And in the screen here, I can pick from different SKUs, different elements, different types, right? So let's say, for example, we want to add cans to this. We can do that. We can see they're in the wrong orientation. So let's change the orientation. So here we can also switch directions. So if we would have, for example, let's pick something else here, chips, for example, crackers. Again, you can change the orientation here. And as you can see here, we can also change the divider types. So what do we want? An H pad as a divider, an S strip to protect the bags, dividing in the length, the width. So you can go through this entire set of dividers and partitions and pick the one you want. And so once we accept that and we OK that and we calculate, again, we have the opportunity then in the final view to open flaps to see the content or selecting this. And I believe it was here in the format option where we can then show the content for the palette. Okay. So that was my first use case, very similar if we go back all the way to the beginning of the screen, very similar to the palette group. So, you know, if we activate the palette group, you'll see that essentially it gives me the same use case right here. If I would calculate this, it gives me the same use case that we had, a single box. And here I can also use the option to display a product inside the box. So let's go back and let's go to our Display Palette Club Store order fulfillment, our second use case. And this will really help me to figure out what the most optimal load is for a pallet based on different SKUs. So again, the software starts presenting me 4 different SKUs with different dimensions and weights and heights. If we just accept the default and we hit the calculate button, you can see that the software is taking a little bit longer to calculate. And that reminds me that we definitely need to visit again the calculation options, the algorithm. Okay, but before we do that, let's interpret what we see here on the screen. We have a nice visual of different SKUs, different products on that pallet. And I can also see here that I have not one pallet, but I have 2 pallets. So this information shows me a feedback of the first pallet. In order to go to the second pallet, I can use the arrow button here to the right, and this shows me my second pallet. Now, you could say, well, wait a minute, Bart, but that does not look very efficient. I mean, I can still stack 2 more of these Cape Cola boxes right here. Okay. So that's absolutely right. And if we go back and we show you again the ordered quantities right here, I keep these ordered quantities flexible in a sense that I am asking for each of these SKUs a total number of packages within a certain range, a minimum and a maximum range. Yeah. So if we would go back to the solution, we can see in the final report how many SKUs have been placed on for each of these. So in the order summary, we can see here the first pallet. We can see the total quantity that was ordered. The maximum quantity was 12. But on this first one, there are 0 of the first, 12 of the second, 24, and 24. Right? If I go to the second one, that's referred to as 2C right here, second pallet, I can see here the final number of packages per load. So all 25 boxes were actually, the blue ones were positioned on the second skid, and then I have 13 of the second one, 1 and 1. Okay, so the software allows you to specify a fixed number. So let me go and then let's just go back and let's just randomly set a number. So let's say the RIC box, the second one here, or let's go to the cola box right here so we can go and scroll through these different SKUs. We can come in here and we could say, hey, instead of 25, I want to add 3 additional ones, 28. Okay. So if I do that and I just hit that calculate button, increase that number, we can see that now I have a total of 28 of these cola boxes, and my pallet, my second pallet and my first one are stacked a little different. So again, in the order summary right there, I can see now I have 28 of those. So that really respects the final number of boxes. Now, when you looked at these stacking, you might have seen that it really stacks it in a column type of orientation. And that's where the calculation settings, again, are very important. So if we select the order fulfillment, the default is a column algorithm. Now, what if I really want to keep certain boxes together and also consider the fragile nature of some of these? So meaning certain of these SKUs I don't want to be stacked at the bottom. I want to make sure that none of those will be crushed, right, by heavier objects. So those are some of the things we could do here by playing around with all these options. So let's start with the layer algorithm and see what we can do there. Okay, so just basically changing that from columns to layers, we can already see a significant change. Maybe not for the better, because I can see that now I have, or I need, I should say, 3 pallets as opposed to 2 pallets. So this is what the first one looks like. This is what the second one looks like. And then finally, the third one. Not efficient by any stretch of the imagination, right? So let's go back and subtract 2 from the ordered quantity for the third box. So let's turn that back to 26, as originally it was 25. Recalculate with layers, and now we only need 2 SKUs, 2 pallets, sorry. Okay, so, and using the standard setup. Let's identify the individual SKUs. So we have a standard box, an RSC box, which is yellowish in color. So let's assign a yellow to it. We have our standard box. So let's assign an orange to that. And we have the tray. So the tray in the fill wizard, we can see that that is the one who has the Cape Cola bottles in it. Okay, and using the standard algorithm, the layer algorithm, and activating the load priority, we can see that we can assign a load priority number to each of the packages, each of the SKUs. Right, and so also you can see here the algorithm prevents heavy objects placed on lighter objects. So if we just activate low priority and we give each one of these SKUs the same low priority, then we get this scenario. Okay, so let's go back and let's assign a higher priority to this tray with cola bottles. So let's put this on 1, and then the other 3, we will activate this and set this to 2, 2, and 2. Let's recalculate now. Okay, so first one and second one just as intended. We don't want the bottles to end up here below the blue box. They might be damaged. So by playing with these parameters, you can see that you can really influence where your SKUs end up in the palette. Also right here with further restrictions, we can restrict mixed tops, so different SKUs in one layer. We can activate the do not allow mixed layers. And then we can also here spread to biggest layer and maximum spread. So those options will give you a spread of the SKUs on the layer. Okay, so here I can see that I need a third one for the ordered quantity. It doesn't fit on the first one nor on the second one. So keep in mind again that you can also play with the height restrictions on your palette here, for example. So by changing that, you know, I can definitely influence this, and now I only have 2 pallets. I only need 2 because I can stack higher. And in case you would want to add or remove objects, you can do that by clicking on the Add Package. So here you can pick from different styles of packaging type. So there's some standard ones in here, and you can also create these yourself. I'll show you that in just a second. We'll also give this one the same load priority. And let's say this one is 10 by 10 by 10 and weighs 2 pounds, and the tray height is 5 inches. There you go. With the fill wizard, I can go in here and I could decide to, you know, fill this with specific types of products if I want to, with dividers like so. Activating that and then adding that to my list of SKUs. So now I have 5 different SKUs. Forgot to enter the ordered quantity, just realized that. So right here, ordered quantity, very important, obviously. So let's say we need 20 of those. And now calculate. So you can see how easy and quickly you can really make changes, go back and forth between your different screens and make adjustments. So if I wanted to keep these together here, these trays, I can say, hey, I want to keep these together, and they should not be stacked at the bottom. Go ahead and do that. So now they are stacked together right there. See, there's still one lonely one out there. Let's look at that from a length front view, right? So, and you can see we also have the spread option activated there earlier. Remember that? So that's, you know, if we deactivate that, and there you go, and recalculate. So that's the beauty of the product, is you can constantly make changes, see the impact that has on your final view of that pallet. Change quantities. Let's recalculate, quickly recalculate, and again see the impact of that, and then see the final ordered quantity, right? Ordered summary. So this can then be printed out to a PDF file, as we demonstrated in the previous show and tell. So this gives you a comprehensive view of the total load with all the individual elements. All the parameters are there, and you can customize this also a little bit, this report. Keep in mind, you can also upload this into the Cape Cloud to share this with other stakeholders via a cloud environment. If I do that, and we'll just authenticate here and push this in the cloud. And then view this one more time, authenticating, but that password was already saved. So here we can now see our mixed load in our mixed size solution. You can see here the project I just uploaded a second ago. And we got visuals down here at the bottom of the page, and you can double click to customize your report. So how do you want your report to be built? These are interactive graphics. I clicked on the wrong one. Let's go back right there. So we'll spend a dedicated session just going over these options here in the Esko Cloud. Okay. Also, what if you would want to import, let's say, an entire pallet in here? So not just one SKU, but a pallet. Is that possible? Not with CapePack, but we do have a solution for that. And you can also watch the Truckfill demonstration. And that's the product that will allow you to not just import individual SKUs, but also entire pallets, and then see how you can optimize the loading of a truck with that.